This is Naoki Yoshida.
This is Fern Hall.
And you are listening to Aetheryte Radio.
Aetheryte Radio.
Here we go.
All right, hello everybody, and welcome to Aetheryte Radio. We have a very special episode today, something that we've been wanting to do for a while. We've had conversations on many episodes before where now that we're going weekly, there are things that we need to do to kind of help fill in the gaps when there's not a lot going on. And so this is the first of that. This is going to be inside the creator studio. So for our first guest today, he started on February 16th, 2015. He published a pilot for a show called MOG Talk. And then 4 years later, he has recorded 163 episodes of that show, with the 164th recording shortly after ours today. We'll make sure to host that. And he's also been a force behind organizing... What's that?
That we always do, man.
I appreciate it very much, too.
He has also helped to organize and publicize the world first race for Final Fantasy XIV's raid content, and he has shoutcasted matches of the Feast in both North American and European fan festivals. Today, we are joined by Frosty.
Hey, what's up, man?
Hello.
How you doing?
Welcome to the show.
I'm excited to do this. This is something, it's been kind of like a passion project of mine for many, many years that I've just never gotten around to. So here we are.
All right.
So for those tuning in, this is the first time we've done this. So as a little bit of a background, what we're going to do is we have some standard questions, followed by some more specific questions for our guests, and then we'll jump into some more questions that are focused just on content creation. We are hard locked at 90 minutes for today. We plan on taking questions from people tuning in if we have time. If we don't, I apologize in advance. So we're just going to jump right into it because we got a lot to go through today. So, Frosty, where does your name come from? How did you come up with Frosty?
Well, I mean, Frosty is something that it was a self-given nickname when I was a preteen. A really long time ago. I was with a group of friends, and they said I was the whitest one, to be honest with you. And that's kind of how it really all started. I just got used to it. I was like, it's kind of cool, right? Huh, Frosty? And then so it stuck with me, and I started streaming. When I first started streaming, it was with Hearthstone and everything, and Frosty was my nickname. I used that. But when I started Final Fantasy, my name was something stupid. It was Aachen Brickmain, right? And so it's like, this is my name. And then eventually I start to stream Final Fantasy XIV, and I was like, it didn't really match up, Frosty and this. And so I changed it over. And this was a little bit after FanFest, the first one, 2014, where I gave everyone the Moogle heads. And I said I was going to wear that Moogle head for the rest of my life. I've been doing pretty good. So I put that on. I was like, well, if I make it a surname, what is that going to be? I'm like, what could be kind of interesting to relate to that? And I was like, Mogborn. All right, that sounds legit. So Frosty Mogborn. And sorry if it's not that interesting, but that was the whole process.
Everybody's got a weird origin story.
It's a process, right?
Yeah.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Ever changing, ever evolving.
Yeah.
Good times. So when did you start playing Final Fantasy XIV itself?
Well, actually, Final Fantasy XIV was something that this is when everybody was kind of having a lull in WoW. And we were like, let's try this out. So one of my friends and Kerr and I, we wanted to play an MMO. She wasn't playing WoW with me, and so we started out playing that. We got into it for a little while. We were back and forth a bit. It was about I think 2.1 around that time. I can't remember what the date is, but I remember the patch pretty well. And we were doing that. Leviathan came out when we started raiding and everything. And I just loved it. All my friends did it. They stopped playing, but it was like I loved it. It was something I could do with Kerr, and so we just kept at it.
That's awesome. What is your main job?
So my main job is actually Paladin. It used to be Warrior back in A Realm Reborn when no one liked Warrior, and I was like, I'm unique, man. I'm going and I'm doing Coil turn 9 with a Warrior, and they're like, we were there with Paladin. I don't care. Look how badass I am on Warrior. And so I had fun with that. Then something forced me into a Paladin job because the person that we could have tank only played Warrior, and I was like, I'll give it up just because I was a raid leader. And so I started playing Paladin, and I got kind of good at it, and I thought, I was like, it's okay. Then I switched to Machinist, for a patch when it first came out in Heavensward. Then I switched to Scholar to fill another role. Then I went back to Paladin, and I've stayed that so far. And I think I just like the type of job it is, what its role, the type of what archetype, is that the right? No, it's
it works, right?
Yeah, just like the protector, going and covering, the defender, and it feels good having healing magic, stuff like that. And so I just got used to it.
You kind of went from warrior being like, oh, I'm special and unique, nobody plays this, and now you're on Paladin. I'm special and unique, nobody plays this.
I was very special and unique in the end of Heavensward there on O12, or no, not O12, A12.
A12, yeah. But then you had Alexander. It was thematic, you know?
yeah, but man, did it suck versus Dark Knight on E12S.
Good God, yeah.
But it was fun. We cleared it.
Yeah. So with Paladin being your first job, what other jobs do you enjoy playing? Do you have a secondary or third favorite?
Well, honestly, I don't, in PvE, I don't really play a lot of other jobs because I do a lot of PvP stuff now. A lot of it's kind of focused there, where I try to go in. I play almost every job I can in PvP. So I'm very familiar with a lot of them. Right now I'm playing Dragoon in PvP. I played White Mage for quite a while. I'm probably going to play Gunbreaker with the billion other people when it comes out in Shadowbringers. And so I really don't have like an alt job. Machinist is the closest thing because I when I first played Machinist, I fell kind of in love with it again because everybody was like, it was kind of fell short at the beginning of the expansion. So I felt kind of special for being good at it, right? Because I got really good at Machinist.
There are like 5 good Machinists. I'll give you that.
And so like no one was wanting to play. I was like, I can still do a good job with it. I felt pretty good, but when I got forced off of it eventually. But if I had to say, I would say it's Machinist.
So you were talking about PvP there. Would you say that's your favorite content, or is it something
currently else? Honestly, I find Feast energizing. I mean, it has a lot of emotions it stirs up. I get angry quite a lot with it, but I mean, it feels good. It feels like I'm doing something it always feels different. I love doing raid, and it's just a lot of work to lead a raid, and that's kind of the role I put myself in every single time. And that's maybe just the type of person I am. I eventually lead raids, and so I didn't really have time for that anymore, and I just needed to log in and do something where I didn't have to have someone else. And doing solo queue Feast was really that, because they always gave me something competitive to do that I could try to get better at. And I think that around the end of Heavensward is when I start to kind of fall in love with it. I would say most of the time that I'm playing Final Fantasy XIV right now, it's doing just catching up on the main story quests and everything else, but then falling into PvP. That's really all I do.
Okay. I have to ask the least favorite content. Least favorite? Anything stick out?
Yeah.
There's an elephant in the room.
Like, you
I
don't
have
want
to say, gathering is probably the worst thing that I can. Gathering crafting is so good in this game. It's developed like it should, exactly for an MMO, but as boring as the.
It is so boring.
Can I swear? I will. I'll calm down.
Fusion on that one, yes.
I'll let you have one.
It's boring. It's boring. You know what? I'll be good. It's boring. I mean, as all out HE double hockey sticks. All right, and
you can say that one. That's fine.
Okay.
I think it's like good. Shit, hell, and bitch are okay.
Okay. Boring as shit. There you go. All right. There you go.
Gosh.
But I know a lot of people love it, and it's really good for the game.
Yeah.
I've tried to force myself into it, and I always just stop. I can't keep up.
Yeah. No, I've never leveled a gather past 40. I don't think so. I agree with you.
Further than me.
So, out of everything that you've done in game, what is the one thing that you're most proud of? What's your biggest achievement in game?
I mean, if we're talking about, there's lots of different things that I like in the game. A lot of stuff I'm more proud of outside of it, but like inside the game. Clearing, I think we did when we cleared A12S, we did that while it was still current and with a group of friends, and it felt right. It felt like we cleared it before The next tier was, well, way before the next tier that was coming out because it was near the end of the expansion, but before it started getting nerfed and everything else. And it just felt like we finally got everything together as a raid team there. We didn't have people leave the group. I didn't have to find new people. Yeah, which is common.
I lead my raid group, so I feel you.
Yeah. And then if I was going into the PvP side, I guess finally being able to get into like that higher top, like 50 side and actually starting to feel like I'm confident and pretty good at the game mode. It felt pretty good. But in-game achievements, I would say it would be those.
Yeah.
Do. I lost my place. What's your favorite thing about the community?
Community now. So the favorite thing about the community is I think that I like how we know each other, right? It feels like we're not really spread out. We don't keep to ourselves. Everybody kind of knows each other. At least that's the role I put myself in. Like I'm very familiar with a lot of people who are in a community. That's kind of what my podcast is about, is getting everyone together to talk about stuff. And so I've met a lot of people, and I feel like a lot of people, especially content creators, for the most part, outside of a few outliers, are very supportive of each other. They try to like say, hey, you're making stuff, I'm making stuff. That's great. We should both just support each other in making things because we know how hard it is. Yeah. And I think overall, like mostly people are amazing to each other. That's great. And I just to follow that up, because I know the next one is what the bad side is.
Thank you for not making me ask it.
Yeah, sorry.
I was just thinking, I'm like, oh, he's got that other like, what do you hate question? Oh
no. We can swap a couple times.
No, that's fine.
Because I mean, it's very related. Because the part that really drives me insane is that there is within the community, and it's with every community, so it's not Final Fantasy 14, I guess, specific, but there's little pockets of just horrible people that just like to make hell and cause problems for everyone. And they make a lot of noise. They go in and they're like, how can I cause the most damage, like mentally, whatever it is, just how can I make a huge impact being a horrible piece of shit, right?
Yes.
And so I'm really disappointed that that's out there. And I really wish it wouldn't be like that, but there's no way to stop it. Right. Absolutely no way. It's just going to always be there. If it's not this asshole, it's going to be another asshole.
Yeah. It's just
but that would be the problem. So it's funny because the best thing and the worst thing is the community to me.
Right. It's amazing.
It's a big place. It's a big place.
Is, you know.
Yeah.
Well then.
It's just good that there is a large section. I think a majority of the community who is just so supportive of each other and nice. So there's something good people can go to and just ignore the crap.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, you have to ignore it. See, that's the thing. And it's hard to. It's so hard. You're always curious. Like a person like me, I like people being happy that I exist, right? I like people being like, oh, this guy's good. I like this guy. I like that. It's a good feeling. So like I look and see what people like. If I'm doing something wrong, I want to know I'm doing something wrong. But then when people are just making up shit, you have to like try to ignore it. It's so hard to filter through it sometimes, but you can see it. As soon as someone says lol, stupid, SJW cuck or something like that, you're like, all right,
well, you're gone now.
probably I don't care about what he thinks. Probably it doesn't matter.
Right.
But yeah.
So where did the idea for MOG Talk come from? How did this all start?
Okay. So MOG Talk was something that I wanted to do just because after FanFest 2014, I was really into Final Fantasy 14. Of course, I think a lot of people were reinvigorated. They wanted to keep playing.
You get a high from FanFest for sure.
That
Super
first
high.
one, it was great because it was the first convention I ever went to. And so I met parts of the community. It was amazing. I was like, man, I had some awesome conversations during this event. That stuff, I go in there, I feel comfortable because I'm talking about stuff with that I love with other people. And we're having a great conversation. It doesn't feel weird. It doesn't feel out of place. And so I wanted to continue that. And so basically, I had no clue what the hell I was doing. I was like, why not do a podcast? Well, I just bring some people on and we talk about Final Fantasy 14 and what's going on. I think we talked about Gold Saucer, I think, on that first episode. It was so long ago. But yeah, no, and I brought just one of my raid members on, and we had a conversation, and then we're like, okay, we just did something. I enjoyed doing it. I guess I'll do it again. And so I was like, all right, well, what can I change here? And it took me, I think, 6 months at least to get to like at least a relatively like I'm kind of okay with the concept and what I'm making here with MOG Talk. But it was just really the interest of wanting to talk with people, and that's who I am. I love having conversations.
So how's that sort of evolved over time? What else have you moved into?
So, well, with MOG Talk, kind of how it's developed over time.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest things I think that changed at the start, I was just getting whoever I could, like friends, someone I knew, I talked to once, you know, and stuff. And then I got some co-hosts on there, like, yeah, this is fun. And we tried that for a while. And then something happened with them and they just couldn't really be on there anymore. And I was like, all right, it's just me. I don't want to force anyone to be dedicated to this show, but I want to go out there. Like, this is the part I want to bring people in. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to invite these people. And so I invited them. We had a show and I was like, great. All right, now I got to figure out who I'm going to invite next. So every single week I have to go through and find like a cast of people. And after a while, that just became what MOG Talk was. It was bringing on people to talk about the community and getting lots of different perspectives, I guess. And it felt good. I felt like I got to meet a whole bunch of people. A lot of people actually I was bringing on the show. Like when I brought Zeno on his first time, it was the first time he's ever been on a podcast.
Right.
And so like a lot of people, I felt I broke them into almost coming in and talking publicly about Final Fantasy XIV in a it's not really official setting, but like you know, like a podcast, right?
Widely seen. How about that?
Yeah.
Widely seen.
There you go.
Yeah.
Some days is widely seen, some days it's not.
No.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where I think bringing on guests and just became the premise of the show was the biggest evolution of it, and that's became what the show was.
Right. So how do you pick those guests and the topics? You know, I'm sure they align. You know, they're together most of the time.
Right.
The right guest for the right topic.
The topics themselves come from everywhere.
Sure.
Like literally, like I could be having a conversation with somebody on something that's completely unrelated. I'm like, you know, that makes sense. Like in the world of Final Fantasy 14. And then I come in and we have the discussion about it. Or something happens, a conversation happens on Twitter, right? Recently, you know, we had this show that we're having soon was spawned from just a conversation about what happened post-show of one of my other shows. And so I was like, you know what, that makes sense. And I believe this should happen. And so I start gathering it and I find out who would fit, who would want to talk about this. That's the most important thing is finding people that want to talk, not just finding people to come on that like, yeah, I'll be on just to be there. Although I do have people who have my back with that. They're like, anytime you need me, I'll come on. I don't care if it's something I've never done in my life. I'll come on and talk about it. And it's nice and it's helpful. But it just going out and seeing what the topic is, who it may relate to, and then I just approach and say, hey, you know, or are you interested in this? And then most of the time it's someone I already know, so it's not that awkward conversation. Back when I was getting raiders on for Paladin show, White Mage show, Healer show, Tank show, Melee DPS show, and I didn't really have like a huge presence, I made characters on servers that these guys had, and then I messaged them in game. I'm like, hey, and every once in a while I'll be like, oh yeah, I know that show, right? And so, and I think this is kind of before Discord got a little bit bigger too. But it's honestly going out there and just finding people who fit, and there's a different method for it each time. Like I don't like to use FF logs all the time, but I'll find out, does this person know, does he make guides for Paladin? Does he make, is he really good is he high on FF logs on Paladin? I mean, you go through this process. Do people recommend them? It's there's several factors to it.
So what's your favorite thing to talk about and your favorite person to talk about it with?
Favorite thing to talk about?
Yeah.
Can't ask him that. Not the person one. No.
Yeah, the person you're not going to get an answer on. I'm going to be honest with you.
Okay, that's fine.
Because I love anyone. See, just to elaborate on that, anyone who, that's the premise of MOG Talk, is bringing on people to the show. And without guests, I couldn't have MOG Talk. And so it means the world to me to have someone come on and make what I'm doing possible. My guests are extremely important, and I love when they come on. There's some I will say are better than others.
Sure.
I will say that.
Yeah.
Because some people come on and they're like, hey, man, I want to be on a show and everything. And I look at it, like, seems great. And they come on and they don't say anything.
Right.
Or like, yeah, they cut out, or like they're like, oh, and they're talking to their friend about the groceries or something in the corner in the middle of the show. I mean, sometimes, you know, I'm not. But overall, I'd say the majority of people who come on the show, I love them. They make what I do happen. Topic wise is a little bit different, because topics that I have with the show, I love, honestly, it sounds generic, but anything that I know the community is passionate about and like wants to hear, I love. Or if it's something that I have people come on, because I could have a show and no one's watching, but I have 4 other people there talking to me passionately about it, and I get off the show and I feel good.
Yeah, you want to do it.
So it just comes down to people wanting to talk about it and having a good conversation. The topic is not as important.
Right. Because personally, I mean, I watch every single one of the, you know, raiders who come on, because that's just more what I'm into. Yeah. So, you know, like those topics are the ones that I'm super into. I just wanted to know.
And that's
like,
kind of the point of the show too, right? It's to like have an even spread out there and to let other people in the community be represented. Like we have shows where we brought on A Stage Reborn, right? And we come on. Not everyone cares about, you know, in-game, you know, theater shows,
right? Exactly.
But it's interesting. It's something that I feel like needs to be highlighted and I want to talk about. And so that's a good show to me, even though that only like a handful of people might actually want to watch it.
So how did you become interested in the World First race?
That was actually something, I saw it and like, I kind of followed Twitter and I saw like, oh, this person cleared it first. Oh, this person. Oh, and I was like, oh man, I wonder if NA is going to clear it first. And this was during like creator time, not creator, before creator. It was the beginning of Heaven's Ward. Okay. Yeah, Gordius. And so we're going in there and it's like, oh, that's really cool. Who's clearing it first and everything else. And I was like, man, I paid attention to Midas and I was following it, but it was a struggle. I had to just check social media and everything else. And so I posted on Reddit and I was like, would anyone care? Like, is this something like I could make a spreadsheet and just kind of track what I find? Would people want that? And everybody's like, yeah, that would be really cool. And so I just did it. And it became a thing. It became a thing that not just the NA, EU, not just the NA community wanted, but NA, EU, and JP. Like everybody, even if they didn't speak English, they were looking at it because they saw a time and date and a rank of when this person cleared it. And this is a lot of stuff that's based off of like trust in a way. You have to go in through some validation, like you check their profile, see if it's the right day. I mean, there's nothing that you can make that's really, really super official outside of Square Enix posting it.
Yeah.
But it's just going in there and making the community have something to be able to track without having to look at 5 different avenues. And I enjoy doing it, although I don't sleep for like a week. But
I mean, because you have every schedule. You have to watch NAEU and JP.
Exactly. So you never know when a clear is going to happen. And so I think during one of the times I was tracking it, I was asleep for 4 hours before I could post that the first clear would happen. But it was something I was interested in, and everyone else seemed to be interested in it as well.
So tell us more about the website, specifically FFXIV.
So that's a whole story. That was basically something I wanted to do because people were like, hey man, this Google spreadsheet is great, but after 100 people look at it, the formatting kind of breaks and it looks a little weird and awkward and everything. I was like, I don't know how to make websites, right? I could go and make like a quick generic template website, I guess. But it doesn't feel right. And so enough people said it. I was like, you know what? I'm going to sit down. Some people offered to work on it and make it happen. And I was like, let's just do it. All right. And in that process, people's intentions are good, but it's really hard to stick to, hey, I'm going to help you make this website. And so while I was doing it, you know, things fell through on that. And it just became too much, I guess, to track other people, but they're not doing something I'm paying them to do. Right. I'm not going to sit there and just force them to go out and spend hours every single day making something when they volunteer to do it. And so I said, all right, I'm just going to do it. And so I put something together and I threw it together really quick. And right now it's been in limbo for a bit while I'm taking school for web development because this is what started it, right?
Yeah.
This is like, I want to know this. I want to have this as a skill, and I want to be able to produce something with it. And so I started working on that, and I came up with something that worked out pretty good. It works really well for UCOB and like ultimates and things like that, because those clears are slower, but does not work very well for 4 fights where they clear it so quickly, and I'm trying to update it. And so right now I'm building new websites, and with a year's worth of experience in figuring out web development, and with databases and stuff like that. So I feel pretty proud of what I was able to learn with it. But I have that all in the motion. So Final Fantasy XIV Progress, or FFXIV, it just seems right. It's stupid to say, but it seems right.
It's right, yeah.
It's kind of stagnant until the next race, because I'm making sure I have the core concepts in there, because people want to log into the website. People want to look for raids and or look for raid groups and stuff with it. I'm like, that's stuff that I need to kind of get the formatting and template ready for first. And so after I get that done, it's probably going to go back full steam ahead. But I've had a year break, so I haven't had to really worry about it.
Yeah, the cool part about classes is you'll probably have to build a website in at least one website in these web classes, right?
I'm going to be honest with you. Like I take that stuff that I've made. I'm like, all right, here's my project.
Yeah.
Right. I've done that a couple of times.
Excellent.
Two birds, one stone.
Yeah.
So we heard about how you got into PvP, but last year you got to shoutcast, the Feast Regional Championship at Las Vegas.
Yes.
How did that even happen? How did you start?
So that really started when I found out that there was through different means. I found out that they were interested in someone shoutcasting it, and I said, all right, well, I do some community stuff. I've done a little bit of shoutcasting, and so I started to get really into it. And I said, all right, you know what, I'm just going to do as good as I can, and if they want to use me for it, then great. Yeah. If not, then that's fine. I feel it was fun. It was fun to shoutcast. And then after a while, I think like I've established myself at least a decent part as not a horrible human being. And so they were like, okay, this guy, we've listened to what he done as shoutcasting, and we're like, okay, this could work, right? We could use him, and it'd be great to have someone in the community come up and do it. And so they offered that to me, and it felt pretty good. It felt great. I was like, all right, now I'm actually doing something official for Square Enix, and it meant a lot to me because it's a company I grew up with. And so it was awesome. And then after that, I took it very seriously, and me and my shoutcasting partner +1, we spent 3 months just going in videos and just shoutcasting and practicing and just hammering it in there, because we wanted to do a good job. And I felt like we did okay.
Yeah.
Right?
How was that weekend? How was it?
It was fun, because a lot of people that were there for the FRC event I knew, because I was in the PvP community. I spent a lot of time in the PvP community before it, and so it was awesome to kind of meet up with all of them. And they all had their jerseys and stuff, and it was a really cool experience for them. So the entire time, I'm kind of going back there and working to try to make sure this section of the event works out really well, and making sure all the players have everything they need and everything. Kind of went way overboard, to be honest with you. But like it was awesome because I got to see a lot of friends that I've made online while doing PvP. Yeah. And then going up on stage for like the first time, it was fun. Exciting, I guess is the best word.
Yeah.
Nerve-wracking at all?
Yeah.
You're like, no, I was completely comfortable. Are you crazy?
I mean, he's Frosty.
Yeah, it's true. I was pretty cool about it.
Someone had to do it at some point, right?
Yeah.
So, in addition to the event in Las Vegas, you also did the championships in Paris.
Yeah.
And then some other PvP matches on Twitch as well. How much work do you put in behind the scenes for these events? What kind of preparation is there?
So for the NA one, we went pretty overboard with trying to just practice and make sure that we had a good method for how we're going to do it. Who are we shoutcasting to, right? Who are we? Most of the Final Fantasy XIV population do not know PvP very well. There's just what the content is. It's not super popular.
Right.
And so we could say, hey, we could go into all these really detailed strats. We know all this stuff. We could talk about all this really high level stuff, but it's just going to fly to hell over people's heads, right? And they're not going to know what's happening. And so we had to develop how we're going to present that in ways that were manageable to people who've never seen it before. And so I even made a video, right? I made a 3-minute intro video to This Is Feast. So people could watch it and have a brief of an understanding of it. And instead of calling Adrenaline Rush, we call it Limit Break because that makes sense.
Sure,
so we just thought about everything that we really could while we were doing the shoutcasting, how the flow should go. Basically, how me and him would actually talk to each other, like when something's going on. When do I need to pick up? When do I need to jump in? And so finding that like groove between each other was actually pretty difficult, but we found it. And it was great. And plus just has like this fucking, I'm sorry. I already did. I messed up.
It's hard not
He said you can have one. He said you can have one.
Okay.
It's fine.
PG-13, get one. All right. So he has this like DJ voice, like really good DJ voice, and I have this just regular normal guy voice, I think. And so it fits pretty well because you can distinct between our voices easily. And so we figured all that out. The next part was actually going in and making the event happen and making sure nothing goes wrong. And so I spent most of that time talking to the community team members, figuring out what their layout was, making sure we fitted that properly, making sure all the players, if they had questions, I would take it and just go to the community manager and say, hey, this is the questions. These are things we got to figure out. And just trying to piece all that stuff together behind the scenes. I was there for shoutcasting, and I just forced my way into going back and managing.
It sounds like you really went above and beyond.
Because I wanted to. I wanted this to go well. I wanted to do a good job. They were inviting me out to do something that I thought was fun and enjoyable, and I didn't want to let them down. And so I went out there and I did everything I could for that. And so we had lots of little discussions about how the flow is going to go on stage, how everything is going to happen when I don't know. If I could find a hole in something, even if it wasn't important, I would find it, right? So at some point, I might be a little annoyed, but like I was just making sure that the audio was right? And so I was actually talking to the sound team and the production team, right? And I was like, hey, does the game volume sound right? If where our voices are, is it balanced out? And so I did a lot of work just trying to make sure that everybody was happy.
Right.
Being prepared is important, and it sounds like you had it in the bag.
Yeah. Well, this is the first time I did it, and so I was just like, what are my concerns?
What can go wrong?
Concerns? Who do I need to talk to? How do we make it not a concern? And I spent most of the event working towards it, doing that.
This is kind of mean to Square Enix, but it sounds like you were more prepared than they were with some of their presentations.
Well, honestly, I did get to see, there's a lot of, it's funny how all that stuff works behind the scenes. And it's not just like Square Enix, it's just like the production team or someone else. So there's so many things that like you could go wrong that you're not going to catch all of them. And so, I mean, they're back there, they're working pretty hard to make it all work. But all of a sudden, for some reason, a video won't start like at a year, right? And it's awkward. You don't know what to do, and so you have to kind of improvise and make the situation better. And Yoshida's like a god at it, so he did pretty good at being the stern guy that just kind of made it work and going back and making light of it. And so all these things are happening. That's actually
part of my favorite when you just goof it around about that kind of stuff.
And so, it's a lot of work back there for Square Enix, I know. And I mean, being able to talk to the community managers and kind of see all the work they do, I have a lot of respect for them, to be honest with you, because they work their asses off. Absolutely. Especially during these events.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so moving back towards content a little bit, where do you find you have the most difficulty when you start to create something new?
It depends.
New content of any kind.
Yeah, of any kind. And so really it comes down to the content I want to create becoming way larger than I expect it to be.
Yeah.
And so like, and the websites are absolutely like a sign of that. Like when I got into the world of like creating websites, I was like, all right, I know what a website is. Right. I did Angel Fire back in the day. I can figure this out. And then like, so I go in there and I'm trying to put HTML in. I'm like, all right, so how do I make this work? Oh, you got to learn this other programming language. All right. Oh, you got to do this.
Cascading style sheets.
Yeah. What? A CSS. And then like you're just trying to figure all these little pieces together. And when I was learning, it's like, what do I need to read? Right. This looks like an answer, but is this actually an answer? Yeah. Is this an answer for something else that's kind of related? And so it's like this huge ocean of like things that I got to filter through.
Welcome to Stack Overflow.
Yeah.
One of the biggest sites for that.
It's huge and crazy. And I mean, I was lost and confused with it. And I realized how big that was. And that's why I started to take it super seriously and go into school and everything else for it. Because I actually enjoyed it. Even though it was like work, I actually enjoyed learning it. When it comes down to like video production, doing that is that sometimes I'm always learning something with that too. Sometimes I get lazy. I'm like, oh, this just works, right? I did it before and it's good enough for me. But when you're doing video production, there's so like After Effects, I'm just now trying to get into. And like I want to learn these things, but it's still something you have to learn, right? You have to push yourself into it and figure this stuff out. And so I would absolutely just say it's not always being able to having the interest in doing something and not realizing how much work it is beforehand. And then sometimes it's just not going to work out because you have to pay attention to other things, but and accepting the failure in it. I mean, sometimes you just have to.
I always think it's interesting when I personally come across something like in some exact situation where I'm like, I don't know how to do a thing. I really kind of want to do this thing for this like nerd hobby that I have.
Right. Yeah.
And then you learn it and then you like it so much. You were like, I really actually want to include this as something I do as my real life job or something. Yeah. And I think that it's really fascinating that sort of situation happens so often for so many people.
Yeah, it's the passion has to come first to me, I think.
Yeah.
When you're getting into it. So the next one is about ease, but I would say, what do you feel like you've grown the most at? Like what can you just bang out every single episode? You're like, I got this part. Part of the pipeline.
Man, I guess just feeling comfortable
right,
having the conversations with people you don't know.
That's a big part.
And so just making that work and just having these conversations naturally and trying to make everybody enjoy their experience too. Right. And so when I come to a show and I bring other people on, they're not always going to be, they may be streamers, or they may be something else, but they're not seasoned in having a conversation face to face with other people. And so making that a good environment is something that I felt like I've grown a good bit into, at least. And that works everywhere I go. Like I can have a conversation with people at work or anywhere else, and I can have it pretty naturally and feel good about it. And hopefully everyone feels good at the end of the day.
It's a skill to work on, and, being in the community, as a streamer or, interacting with chat or, that sort of stuff just hones that skill,
right.
It's really awesome talking about the skills that you pick up doing these nerd things,
Yeah. A lot of soft skills you learn. Yeah. Absolutely.
I really like that
answer. What are the tools that you use to produce the content that you do? What in terms of equipment, software, what goes into making something like MOG Talk?
So MogTalk, I use GIMP because for some reason I'm not using Photoshop. But I mean, I use Adobe.
Possibly so the price point.
Yeah. Possibly. Well, I have the student subscription because I'm going to school, right?
So there you go.
I kind of cheated a little bit. But I am going to school, man.
Yeah, whatever.
So I use Adobe for both video production and for actually, that's it. Video production. I used to use it for some other stuff, but no, video production. And it's not like it's the best. It's just what I've learned, and so I've gotten used to it, and I just use it. And it's easy to just go in there every week and kind of do what I need to do. OBS, of course. Hardware-wise, honestly, just a gaming computer. Right? I don't do anything too crazy because it's not super intensive to do MogTalk. I mean, the stream the game, it can be kind of intensive every once in a while. Do like really high level recording with OBS. You kind of need a lot of hardware, and so there's a lot of stuff when I was doing PvP overviews, and I was kind of like going into the matches, and I was going back and doing recordings and slowing it down and explaining everything. That required a lot more hardware to it. But honestly, just a regular gaming computer. Like I use, I think, a 1080 in there, and like I have an i7. I use GIMP again for my layout and design, changing every single week. And I use Podomatic because for my RSS feed, because I'm an idiot. And I haven't gotten familiar enough with it, and I really need to, because it's kind of crap. But it works. It's something I can put it on there, and it's surprising how many people want an audio version of it, because I never thought about it when I started the show, but then they ask for it, and then if I don't put it up, they're like, "Hey, where's that?"
I want to listen to it on my way to work, or
And so like I use that currently. I'm trying to think. My mic is an Audio Technica. I have a little sound mixer over there. It's like $70 sound mixer. I sit in a mesh chair. I have an L-shaped desk. It's fake wood.
It's not made out of mahogany.
I don't know. Is there any other? I'm trying to think of what other things I could say that would be interesting. I have a Logitech 1080 cam. That's it.
Yeah,
I guess that covers some of the basics, I think.
It's funny because it's much easier nowadays to get into it, to get into doing this sort of thing. You know, you're talking about your origin story. Just wanted to do it, and you do it. You know,
absolutely.
It doesn't kill the wallet.
Yeah, exactly.
I spend more money making MogTalk with subscriptions to things and like Zoom, right, and everything else. And so like I spend more money than I receive, because I'm not. I don't know. The channel's never really gotten to a point to where I'm like, oh, I can live off of this. It's always been like, hey, I got $20 to pay my subscription this month, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so like it's not very profitable. But yeah, no, absolutely, it's a money sink.
I feel like they're a little bit in the way of perks just from the community.
Right.
Perks from the community, as in.
Like you get invited to stuff, or you get
there's that.
So like the media tour, right?
There's that stuff.
So that's pretty cool. And so like going to be able to go to FanFest and everything else. I mean, that's pretty awesome. I like it. I feel like I get to know I feel pretty familiar with the community team. I'm sure Matt's like, I hate that dude. But like, I think overall, it feels awesome to get to know these guys. I love the guys on the team, in the EU team too. It was awesome getting to know them, Clem and everyone else, because they were really cool. And they were really kind to us when we were over there. But yeah, being able to go to these events is pretty cool. And when I tell people about it, they're like, "Whoa, that's awesome!" And to me, it's like, well, yeah, I guess so. I mean, I never really think about it that way. I think about, that's something I want to do.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. You know, I work in the industry, and you know, every once in a while I'm talking about FanFest or something, and people are like, "That's so cool," and I'm like, "What do we do every day?" Like,
guys, we make video games. Come on.
What are you talking about?
Right.
It's just, you know, it's one of those cool things, and it's really cool to have that. Kind of, it's not really a reward because you're still doing work there, but it's cool to be able to do it, you know.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, this is all just a hobby for me. I mean, that's all it is. And that's, I think, the biggest thing that makes me kind of different than a lot of people on Twitch is that I treat it just as a hobby. And so life comes before everything else, to be honest with you. And so some weeks I've had shows not happen for like almost a month or 2 months, right? And it's just, I can't do it. I have to. I'm getting married, right? I'm not going to have a show. I'm not going to, stream my marriage. You're
not going to get one of those 14 marriages in Japan at all.
Well, that happened after the fact. But no, like there's parts of my life that I still want my wife to be happy. I still want to have a good life with my dogs. And so like this is
balance.
Exactly. And then I don't want to dedicate everything that I have to Final Fantasy 14, but I still love it, and I still want it to be part of my life.
Right.
So kind of along those lines, and also kind of reverse of what we were talking about with learning skills from nerd stuff. What from your life have you used to put into this particular hobby? Like what skills from life?
So one of my first jobs, or I guess it was like my second job or so, I became a manager at a restaurant. And there's lots of times where I just became like a lead in something. Like I was in charge of telling people to do things, right? And so like I think honestly, being able to work with people and manage things and try to produce and make things happen, it's a huge benefit to things that I do for like MOG Talk, right? And so I'm having to go into, like, I'm a project manager now, so I have to like go and I have to organize people, I have to talk to clients, I have to do lots of things, and all this stuff works perfectly for running a podcast because I have to go and talk to people, I got to organize things, I got to create topics, I got to see if things are.
Fusion's just like, yup.
Oh, for sure.
A lot of management experience helps out tremendously. And I mean, like I was in video games, I did raid leading, I did various things when I was a lot younger, where I was a 13-year-old leading guilds and stuff, right? And I mean, like these like guys in college listen to me, I'm like, yeah, good thing I'm not on mic.
Right? They wouldn't be able to tell if I was 13-year-old girl or a 13-year-old boy.
Right, exactly.
That is a lot like my experience and WoW, being that like, oh yeah, he's the guy who goes to Elite's Jerks and tells everyone how to do their stuff, like I'm like, yeah, I'm not put together in real life though, like
no, no, not at all.
No way.
But yeah, no, I would say basically the leadership stuff is kind of what I carry over to most.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, who would you say your content is created for?
It depends on the week.
What do you want? Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
absolutely. Depends on the week. We have one that's dedicated to PvPers last week, right? The week before that, we had one dedicated to streaming. The one before that, we had one that was dedicated like a stage report. I don't know why I keep thinking about that, but it was just such a one that felt like the most niche one.
It's very neat.
Yeah. But it just really depends. I want to make sure, and no one needs to watch MOG Talk every single week, right? But I want it to be a point to where people can still come together and hear interesting topics or something that they're interested. They're like, "Hey, man, that's cool. I'm going to watch it, or I'm going to listen to it." And so, honestly, the Final Fantasy 14 population doesn't matter.
Everybody,
age, gender, anything. It's everyone. It just. The topics will be more interesting or less interesting depending on what we have that week.
Right.
So as you've done this, I'm sure, I know there's rules and standards that we kind of have for our show. What are some of the rules and standards that you've kind of established for yourself for what you do?
Now, are we talking about not swearing? Or are we talking about like...
stuff like not swearing, show length, maximum number of guests, stuff like that?
Like maximum number of guests, it depends. I mean, if we're doing like a raid show, like World First, I'll bring on the raid team, like 9 people, 10 people, right?
Ooh,
but they're not all on camera. They're in like Discord or something, and I'm having a conversation with them. And that usually works out funny enough because not everybody in a raid usually likes talking, but they want to be there, right? They want to, like, if there's a point to put in their input, they may say 2 words during the show, but they made World First, right? They want to be there on the show and talk. It's so funny when people are, I had this conversation where I brought somebody on and it was with the raid group and he's like, the only reason I got it is because I wanted to come on MOG Talk. I'm like, what?
It's like, that's where I am?
What are you talking about? I feel more like he was just being generous to me and kind, but it's funny, a lot of these people who are raiding, they were watching the show and they got into raiding or they got serious into raiding after watching the show for their first time. Or like various people who got to where they were, they watched the show first, and then they eventually started to progress in whatever content they're creating now. And so it feels weird because I have been around for over like almost a little bit over 3 years or 4 years now doing MOG Talk, and so I've been around a lot of the community. God, I forgot. Okay, the guest question. Rules, okay, guest. I want to say that like right now I'm aiming for like 4 people on the show. and that way people can feel a little bit more comfortable. If they don't have a lot to say, they don't feel forced into the conversation. I mean, I'll go down to one. It really depends on the week. I try not to go over what I have right now, especially if I'm doing video, because it feels weird having someone sit there and kind of just and that's all they're doing, just kind of nodding and looking at the cam, and all their points are all already taken. Like, I have Arthas on the show, and a dude's like saying like half the show is him yelling and screaming, you know. And so it just depends. Yeah. But rules, and I try to have people, they can swear, they can say whatever they want, but they not be like a bigot or like a racist or anything. Sure. Yeah. If they are, they're probably not going to come on the show. Yeah. You don't always know this, because I mean, like, I have people come on the show, and then afterwards I'm like, a year later something happens, I'm like, I would never have that guy on the show again because of things that he did. But it just is what it is. You don't know some of this stuff. And that's kind of the risk I take with doing open guest. But that I don't have really a rule outside of that. I think show length, I used to not have a length or requirement on that, and I would have shows that would go 4, 5, 6 hours. And then we slowed that down, and I tried to make it more manageable. Now I'm usually aiming for 2 hours, and then with between 2 to 3 hours, and if it's between an hour and 2, that's good too, because a lot of people can't absorb this content if it's too long, because it's like I watch Critical Role like every single week, and that's a lot of content. 4 hours of people playing D&D, and so throughout the week I turn it on, and then I watch it 30 minutes an hour, and I go do whatever I need to do and come back, and it takes up a lot of my free time to watch it. And so like so that's the whole idea, where I start to narrow it down to like the 2 hour mark, because I feel like that makes it to where people can actually watch it and enjoy it before the next show comes on, if they want to watch that one.
Would you say other content creators in the community have influenced you in what you do?
I mean, there's aspects of it, right? And so like if I watch something or I see something, I'm like, wow, that's really cool. I wonder if that's something that would fit MOG Talk. I'm not too stubborn to not take that, right? Exactly. And so like I'll add it to my show, and like if it's really cool, I'm trying to think of who might have inspired something on the show. Shoot, man. I guess, since I think a lot of stuff is like subconscious too, right? Yeah, exactly. And so, like, you see it, and then eventually you're like, you have the idea, and you're like, hey, did I think of this, or is it something I saw somewhere else? And that kind of happens. I wish I had something on there that I could just like give someone like 100. I could give people credit for doing things for a show, but I can't think of anything that's like, this inspired me to start doing this.
Just kind of
like you were saying,
blends together.
Like what you were saying earlier, there is such a big chunk of the community that all gets along and supports each other. It's like you all meshed up a little anyway. You might take a little bit from each other.
Who cares? I mean, if you're putting out good content, do it. This isn't a monopoly. You don't need to
support each other rather than be like, hey, that was my idea.
I remember actually on that note too, I was talking to Mike, Mr. Happy, one time. I'm on his the dream team there. I talk to him every once in a while. I was having a conversation. I was like, should we do it to where like we let each other know what our topics are, and we just kind of plan, so we're not like doubling up? And he's like, nah, man, you just do whatever you do, and I'll do whatever I do, and it just works out the best way, because there's no reason that we need to try to force each other to do different content. Just create what we want to make. And I was like, that makes sense.
Part of, I think, what is the most interesting and what you try and get on your show is getting all the different opinions, because somebody might have a really good opinion over here, but then somebody else might have an almost opposite opinion, and they're both very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you try and drive each other out from same topics, you miss out on that kind of stuff.
It's always interesting to see.
I will say sometimes we do have people who come on, and I get a full cast, and there is a lot of agreeing, and it's not like super different. And I'll go in there and I'll say stuff, and I'll be a horrible person just to create that conversation.
Devil's advocate, you gotta have it.
I try to, and people. That's why in some communities they say toxic Frosty, right? Because I do stuff, and I say things that are hard. I do it for fun too. Like if I'm like off topic, Like if I'm in chat or something, I'll just say something completely horrible to someone because they know you have to know that's out of place, right?
Yeah, it's not real, you know. Like here on our show, it's always like there's a spectrum, you know, and it tends to happen the same way every time. You know, there's fusion.
Yeah.
Then he loves love. He loves everything, and it's me in the middle being neutral. And you know, it's kind of interesting that when you get different guests, you have a different spectrum each time. It's
yes.
really awesome.
I'm not gonna say that I purposefully pick the opposite opinion of fusion.
But
that may not be
fun.
true.
You know,
but sometimes it might be true.
It's fun, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But it creates more fun in the end.
Right.
And you have a good laugh, and it is what it is.
Well, it's my turn, right? Because I got okay. Cool. I just want to talk now.
Just
but
go. It's fine.
What's one thing that we as content creators aren't doing that we should be doing? Like what kind of content should we be doing? What topics?
What do you want to see, buddy?
Oh, okay. So like for like shows and everything else.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest. I have to think of that for myself all the time.
Sure. Yeah. Exactly.
And so I'm like, what do I want to see that people want to talk about?
Right.
And it's something that it may not have been mentioned before, and there's a community or people out there that want to hear it. And so when it comes down to it, it's really I don't know. That's a problem I have to solve every single week.
Right. Yeah. For me, you know, the first thing that I thought of was the world first race in WoW. And how amazing it was, and how we need something like that, whether it's community driven or
where it's streamed and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. That was so amazing. You know, like we need more of that, I think. But you know,
it's tough. It's tough because I mean, like you are putting yourself up for exactly. Yeah. And so you may lose to do it. You'll make a lot of streamer money.
Yeah, certainly
doing it.
And you get so much buzz for the game too. You know, I think it would be great. But
yeah, and it's fine. I think the people who are in World First, they aren't in it to get famous on stream and make streamer dollars. They're doing it because they're competitive and they want to win and they want to be first. And it's fun to be in that race. And so streaming just takes that away for them.
Yeah. It's true.
And so I respect it completely. And it makes sense. And we will always have the content streamed by large streamers that are really good into rating, even small streamers, a lot of people get known because of how far they get in content when it's released. And I think that's a good fit for it. And so if everybody streamed it, you know,
it depends.
It just really, for us as an audience, I think it would be really cool. But I
might be a bad experience for them. Yeah, that makes sense.
Can't blame them.
Yep.
On the opposite side of that coin, do you think that there is something right now in the community of content creators that's being done too much? Something like too many podcasts, too many guides, too many of something?
No, man. No. Like honestly, like no, you just need to keep making it. And like people who make it better make me want to make what I do better, right?
Sure.
And so like if I don't have that competition, I still want to do a good job, but I don't have something that will force me into doing it, which, you know, things like school that forces you to learn something, right? And so I'm happy that there are other people out there doing stuff. I think that if there's too much of something, it's geez, man, I can't think of anyone doing too much of anything because everyone has their own way to entertain people, and there's never really a reason for me to ever say that they can't do that.
I mean, it's going back on what we said earlier, right? You do what you want to do,
right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I feel like everybody should never feel scared that, oh, I'm doing something, but it already exists. If you enjoy doing it, do it. I swear, if people did MOG Talk, but they did Moogle Talk instead, and they went up and did the exact same thing I was doing, they would still do what I'm doing. And they would do it so well and great, and it would be overly produced, and there's no way I could keep up with it with my hobby life, right? And so I would still do what I do if I can. If people still want to come on the show, because I want to talk to people. I want to have this. This is my enjoyment is doing it. So
nobody's ever going to do anything precisely the same way.
No, it's always going to be different in some way.
I think if I had to say anything, people, and this might go into another question, I can't remember exactly, but this is something that people may fail at, is they go in trying to make money,
right,
and trying to make a job out of it, which is fine, right? This is something that people can do if they want to, but it's disheartening to see people focus so many hours into something that will that's a risk that could depress you completely. And you start setting up all these points to doing things that you don't want to do because you want to consider your success is how many viewers you have. Your success is how much money you're receiving. Your success is something that is you could track and keep count of. When really to me, your success is being happy. And so if you let this stuff start taking over your life and you're doing things that you don't want to do to make this content, you shouldn't be doing it. Absolutely. Well, and the other part to this is people need to go out, and when they're streaming and they're trying to make their life maybe out of streaming, that's again fine. But it was a great idea. If you need something done, learn how to do it. Especially if you can apply it to a job. Like Photoshop, right? Graphic design, things like this. It's good to go out there and support people, artists and everything, and get things commissioned, but try to go out there and learn it too, maybe. Just something that you would be interested in learning, because streamer doesn't go well on a resume in most cases, unless if you're going into a community manager position or things like that, which can happen. But don't die because you're like 10 years later, you're living on minimum wage, still streaming, and you have nothing else to grow off of. It hurts. For me, it sucked when when I first started going to school. I only had my one. I screwed it up. I screwed it up pretty bad. Like I didn't know what I was doing, and I messed everything up. And so if I would have tried to focus on that instead of just doing the things that are like, I want to be really successful at being a good raider or something, right? If I put way more focus on doing just a good job and going through school and getting through all these things that I could apply to a resume, then I would be in a better position than I am in my actual real life. And so I think, like me, I'm learning web design now. I can apply that to a resume. I can make websites and put that into a portfolio and get a job outside of streaming. We need to set up these little safety nets and barriers and not just jump off the cliff and hope we live, right? That's kind of what my thought is go out there and try to always, if you're streaming and you could do something for your stream that you can apply for a resume, do it. Like go out and learn how to make websites, go out, learn how to do Photoshop, go out, learn how to edit videos, go out and learn something, and you could apply it and still be part of your passion, but now you have a skill. But sorry.
No, good. I love it. Honestly, that is such good advice for people who want to get into streaming, whether it's for money or not.
Exactly.
Love it. So kind of along those lines, like what's the most difficult thing about doing all of this, do you think? Is it keeping that sort of stuff in mind, or?
The most difficult thing is, again, I think losing sight of being happy with what you're doing. That's essentially what you're supposed to be doing for fun and enjoy it. And instead treating it as something that you want to be really the best streamer in the world and everything else. That's great. But when you start realizing, and I did this too, when you start realizing that you're spending 50 hours a week streaming, and you're just playing games and you're talking with people and everything else, and at the end of the day that you have that conversation, you had a good time, but you're spending 50 hours a week kind of not building a lot of stuff. I mean, you could be building your stream up and everything else, but you're not gaining more than that. And who knows, maybe people just don't like the way you look. They look at your face and they're like, I want to punch this guy. I hate this person. And you can never be a successful streamer. And it's unfortunate because I mean, it turns out that way. You can make all the wrong steps constantly and you don't realize what's going on. And I've seen a lot of people who are actually really good streamers and they make a okay amount, but they are depressed. You know, the most common reason people don't stream a day and they're like, hey guys, I can't stream. It's because they don't feel good at all. They feel like Oh, okay, I can say shit. Okay, they feel like shit. And it's tough. And I think the mental health of all this stuff is something that's completely overlooked.
Yeah.
Mm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So for all that difficulty trying to balance it, what is the most rewarding part of it? What keeps you doing it?
People saying good job.
Yeah.
That's people coming back and then they're like, hey, thank you for that. Hey, I really enjoyed it. Hey, I really appreciate what you're doing. Hey, anything positive feedback is literally it. Going back, and that keeps me doing it. Having those conversations with guests, and after the guests, they come on and they message me later like, hey man, I had a really good time. Thanks for letting me come on. This stuff makes me want to keep doing it because I'm like, hey, I'm actually doing something that is great, or for at least like a person or two, right?
Yeah.
There's people out there that are happy in some regard because of what I did. That would be that's it. That's all it is. Even though I have this person behind me saying, oh, it's Frosty, that social justice warrior, POS, I hate that guy. He's just over there. He doesn't know what he's talking about at the time. I have 500 other people to that one person who are telling me nice things. I'm okay. I'm gonna cut that off and just listen to the other side because I don't need to listen to the guy who's just out there to get me. But there's 500 people keep me happy. Yeah.
So with that, have you had like this kind of, what's been your like I've made it moment? Like something happens and you're just like I did it. Like this is awesome.
This is
so something that I would say is awesome was being on stage at FFXIV, right? To be honest with you, that was something like originally when I did MOG Talk and I made it to the first year of doing it, I made it to episode 50. I was in tears at the end of doing that show. I did it like a 10-hour show where I brought lots of guests on, and then there's people watching it and people all having a good time. I got to go back and I made a highlight reel of all my shows, 50 shows, and I watched it and I teared up. I was like, this is like, I did this, right? Over the last year. I created this stuff, right? I made this stuff happen. This is a lot of stuff. This is holy crap. And it was amazing to see that. And then after that, it was just expanding even more and doing like the world race and people saying, hey, this is something that I love and enjoy, and seeing my stuff published in Japanese, right? And then at the JP Fan Fest when they played like a video I did for the intro and translated it to Japanese, I was like, all right, this is pretty good. And then Yoshida saying, thanks, Frosty. I was like, okay, I'm feeling pretty good about this. I think there's just multiple points, right? It wasn't just all one. It's just everyone had kind of a different step to it. And I don't think I can't say it's kind of a weird way to say I've made it.
Sure,
right. But I feel proud. I feel like success. I feel like, yeah, I did something with this. I made it. I'll say that when I'm like living in my mansion or something.
Right.
There you go.
Based completely off the funds from the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Along those same lines too, I'm wondering, and you may not have one, but do you have like a small world moment where somebody knows of you through your show and you didn't realize it, or anything kind of like that?
Well, I guess so. Like when I realized like maybe 3 or 4 people I know and talk to live within like a hour driving distance of me. That was kind of like a small world part. When you go to FanFest, it feels really crazy. Where you go back, every single person, they come up to you, or like every other time you'll have someone come up to you and say, "Hey man, what's up?" I'm like, wow, that's kind of weird, right? Yeah, it's like why does this person know me? Why? And it feels good. And to me, it feels like I shouldn't have a reach to where there's ever anybody who ever says my name anywhere.
Right.
That I ever run into. And so of course it happens at FanFest because a lot of people come that are really dedicated to Final Fantasy there. I can't say like there hasn't been too much of that. I've been really good, especially in like classes and everything else, of like when they were like, oh, you went to Paris, what'd you do that for? Business trip. Just like I don't want to like break that divide there just yet, because I don't live off of it, right? And so I have other parts of my life that I have to secure and make sure they don't get interrupted.
Right.
And so I'm pretty good about doing that. But I don't know. I think just knowing that there's people who are doing things in my realm of content creation that I could go and have a beer with. That feels pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're up to our last question, but real quick too, if there's anybody watching right now on Twitch, we do have a little bit of time after this question. If you guys watching right now have a question for Frosty that we haven't talked about, go ahead, drop it in the chat, and we will get to those after this one.
Mm-hmm.
So the last question is, what would you say to someone who's thinking about getting into content creation? But I feel like you already answered that.
Absolutely.
Do you have anything to add to that in particular? Or?
And this is just my mantra, to be honest with you. Whatever you're doing, do it realizing that you're trying to reach the highest level of happiness that you can. You know, just being happy and being content with your life. Because if you are unhappy for, let's say, 40 years, you're working your butt off, and then you have only like a couple more decades. I don't know how healthy you are, depending on how healthy you are, how much longer you got. But you're killing so much of the time you have on this world to be happy. Yeah. And it doesn't matter how much money you're getting. It doesn't matter anything else. The end goal for me personally, and I think that if a lot of people took this the same, is I want to be happy, and I want to make sure other people around me, and you should take this with a grain of salt.
Sure.
I don't want to make other people unhappy, right? You don't want to please everybody, but you don't want to be the reason why someone is feeling like crap. There are simple things you can do with the way you talk, with the way you interact with people that don't make you unhappy, that you can do, and the world is a better place overall. And I don't think, you know, you're gonna have bad karma if you go over there and you spit on like a homeless person or something. I hope you have bad karma or something, right? Something bad happens to you. But like the fact is, you can be a horrible person and probably get away and still be happy. But I think it'd be great, right? Yeah. If overall, if you believe that you want to be happy, just to go out there and kind of keep that same belief that you don't want to make other people feel miserable and shitty as well.
Yeah.
And so when
pay it forward.
Yeah.
You know.
And so when you're making content and you're doing this and you're going out and you're streaming or you're putting work into this, just make sure you're keeping your happy level, I guess, at an optimal point, right? You don't want to be too happy. You don't want to like blow up or anything because you're so happy. But like you want to stay very content with your life.
I like that a lot.
Sorry. Sometimes I go on a rant and I don't realize I'm doing it. And,
no, I love it. It's great.
Yeah.
That's such a good message.
That's what happens when you do podcasts. It just kind of keeps going. And
doing it 4 years, man. Just yeah.
All right, let's.
My heart has grown 3 sizes today.
I can answer Zep's question if you want me to, real quick. Yeah, Frosty. So how I stay frosty, and I told people what I do, and this is important. It's something that's not a lot of people know. So what you could do is you can go out. Everybody has a refrigerator, so like what you could do is you could clear out a lot of stuff that's inside the refrigerator. Go in, close the door, spend like 30 minutes in there, right? Just hang out until you feel you achieved a level of chill that you're just like, this feels right. I feel very cold and cool right now. Then you get out. And you can carry that for quite a while. So yeah, if you want to stay frosty, just use your refrigerator, dude.
Yeah.
I was going to suggest real life tips.
Exactly. I mean, it's about to be summer, you know? Like, come on.
Yeah.
Well, for most of us, yeah.
Yeah. I get asked that question all the time. I can't give a serious answer to that.
I was going to say sunscreen because of the origin of it.
Right. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Keep an ice cube on your head. Just let it melt down your body. Yeah.
Limited exposure to the day star. Yeah. That sort of thing, you know?
Yeah.
Stay inside.
Absolutely. Oh. Yeah.
All right. Well, that looks like it's everything from the chat. Frosty, was there anything that you wanted to talk about that we haven't so far?
Honestly, I think you guys have covered it pretty well. You guys have very good questions, and I appreciate it too. Honestly, I don't get invited on a lot of shows. Funny enough, every once in a while, you know, I get on State of the Realm, and there's that one time I got on LBR.
Invite everybody to your own show.
Yeah. After they come on my show, they're like, "I had enough of Frosty for right now." It'll be okay. But yeah, no, I mean, I love coming on shows and talking to people and everything else, especially if I can. If there's any availability for me to do it, I like doing it because it's weird being on the other side, to be honest with you. Because I don't actually do that very often, and so I have to like limit myself to not like trying to control pace and like go through and do other things, which I just do all the time. And so but I enjoy it because I don't have to manage anything. I just sit here and talk.
Just answer. It's fine.
It's like participating in a raid instead of being the raid caller. Like,
You know how good that feels? That's so much fun.
Oh, I never did it again. I never did it again. Did it in WoW for too long. Never did it again.
It feels good not having the raid lead, man. And just like, then you got to put up with all the drama and everything else. Like, oh, this person doesn't want to raid anymore because this person's not playing Dragoon. They don't want to play Dragoon. So he wants to leave the raid now because he's a bard. It's just like, all right, man, can you play Dragoon like some weeks and Samurai on other weeks? And then this guy's pissed off every time he plays Dragoon. And it's like, you know what? I don't want to manage this. I'd rather just log in and try to clear something.
Yeah.
It's fun. It has its moments, but
So, Frosty, where can everybody find you and the content that you make?
So my stream channel is Frosty_TV, which I'll be hosting the female perspective coming up next, bringing on some cool guests, which should check out if you're interested in that conversation. And for social media, I usually only pay attention to Twitter. I don't like Facebook, and I don't like a lot of other different various places for social media like Instagram, anything else. Twitter is really where I go, which is Frosty TV Stream. It's a little long, so people kind of hate having that long name in there, but it is what it is. And the other part, YouTube, funny enough, I'm still running on an old YouTube that's Auchenbrick, Maine. But it's called Frosty, but it
all comes back.
All comes back together. You can't change that name, right? I don't.
Not that I know of.
Yeah, and so you're just kind of stuck. I don't want to have to redo everything, so I'm like, I'll just leave it.
Sure, it's good. Well, it's like Haps is like Xehanort something like. It's like, all right, whatever.
You just what it is, and like I think the Podomatic channel, I don't know. I think you just look up MOG Talk or Frosty or something, and maybe I'll show up. I don't really know what it's called or how to get there. I just put it up there for the RSS feed, man.
Yeah.
There you go. All right. Well, that'll do it for this episode and our first segment here of Inside the Creator Studio. Thank you for everybody for tuning in. Big thank you to Frosty for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on, man.
That's going to do it for this week. We'll be back next week. But for now, go ahead, and in about 40 minutes here, we'll be hosting Frosty for his episode. So thank you, and we'll see you later.
See you guys. Stay frosty.